When comparing the dictators of the 1930s, Benito Mussolini appears relatively limited in both power and impact. Although he helped pioneer fascist rule in Italy and influenced later authoritarian leaders, his regime never approached the scale of repression, control, and destruction achieved by Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union. Stalin stands among the most ruthless figures in modern history, overseeing a vast totalitarian system that used political purges, forced labor camps, mass surveillance, and state terror to maintain power. Policies implemented under his rule contributed to the deaths of millions of people and fundamentally shaped the Soviet Union for decades, making his dictatorship far more extensive and consequential than Mussolini's in both scope and human cost. Joseph Stalin was born in 1879 in the Russian province of Georgia, meaning he was not ethnically Russian. His father was a shoemaker, and his parents hoped he would enter the Orthodox priesthood. He was admitted to a seminary but expelled in 1899. Shortly after becoming involved in revolutionary politics, Stalin joined the Russian Social Democratic Party and aligned himself with the Bolshevik faction led by Vladimir Lenin. During his early years as a revolutionary, he quickly earned a reputation as a determined and ruthless organizer. Stalin participated in activities designed to support the Bolshevik cause, including organizing bank and train robberies to obtain funds for party operations. He also helped raise money and build underground networks that strengthened the movement. At the same time, he became known for enforcing party discipline through intimidation and violence when necessary. These experiences helped establish Stalin as a loyal and effective Bolshevik operative, while also revealing the ruthless methods that would later characterize his rule over the Soviet Union. Stalin played an active role in the Russian Revolution of 1917 and in the Russian Civil War that followed. As a trusted member of the Bolshevik leadership, he was assigned important responsibilities by Vladimir Lenin, including helping secure control of Georgia for the newly established Soviet state. Stalin carried out this task with considerable ruthlessness, relying on harsh measures and repression to eliminate resistance. His methods became so extreme that they alarmed Lenin, who came to view Stalin as increasingly dangerous. In the final years of his life, Lenin began considering ways to curb Stalin's growing influence within the Communist Party, and even suggested that he be removed from his position as General Secretary. However, Lenin suffered a debilitating stroke in 1922 and was unable to act effectively on these concerns before his death in 1924. As a result, Stalin remained in a powerful position and was able to use his control of the party organization to outmaneuver his rivals and eventually become the dominant leader of the Soviet Union. Following Lenin's death in 1924, the Communist Party became the scene of an intense struggle for power among several leading Bolsheviks. Stalin, who served as General Secretary of the Communist Party, held a crucial advantage because his position allowed him to control party appointments, promotions, and internal administration. Using this authority, he gradually built a network of loyal supporters while isolating and undermining his rivals. Over the next several years, Stalin successfully outmaneuvered opponents such as Leon Trotsky, Grigory Zinoviev, and Lev Kamenev. By 1927, the 15th All-Union Party Congress declared that opposition to the official party line would no longer be tolerated. Since Stalin increasingly controlled both the party leadership and the definition of that party line, this decision greatly strengthened his position. From that point forward, Stalin effectively exercised full control over the Soviet Communist Party and, in turn, the Soviet Union itself, laying the foundation for one of the most powerful and repressive dictatorships of the 20th century. Stalin believed that the Soviet Union was vulnerable because it was surrounded by hostile capitalist nations and lagged behind the industrial powers of Western Europe and the United States. He argued that the country could survive only by rapidly transforming itself into a modern industrial and military power. To achieve this goal, Stalin launched the first five-year plan in 1928, an ambitious economic program designed to accelerate industrial growth at an unprecedented pace. The plan called for the rapid construction of steel mills, factories, and manufacturing centers, along with the expansion of electrical infrastructure and heavy industry. It also emphasized increased military production to strengthen Soviet defenses. These policies produced dramatic industrial growth, but they required enormous resources and sacrifices. Rather than funding this transformation through gradual economic development, Stalin chose to extract wealth from the countryside. Soviet peasants were forced to bear much of the burden through collectivization, a policy that consolidated individual farms into large state-controlled agricultural units. This process generated widespread resistance, economic disruption, and immense human suffering, but Stalin viewed it as necessary to finance his vision of a powerful industrial Soviet Union. Stalin abolished private farming and forced millions of peasants into vast collective farms controlled by the Soviet state. Under this system, farmers lost ownership of their land, livestock, and agricultural production, all of which became state property. Many peasants bitterly resisted these changes because they were unwilling to surrender land that their families had worked for generations, feared the loss of their independence and traditional way of life, and opposed government policies that disrupted rural communities. Resistance took many forms. Some peasants hid grain, refused to cooperate, burned their crops, or slaughtered their livestock rather than hand them over to state authorities. Stalin viewed such actions as threats to his program of rapid industrialization and collectivization. In response, his government launched a brutal campaign against perceived opponents, using arrests, deportations, confiscations, and widespread repression to force compliance. The result was immense human suffering across the Soviet countryside and one of the most dramatic and coercive social transformations of the 20th century. Between 1928 and 1933, Stalin's campaign of forced collectivization and grain requisitioning had devastating consequences for the Soviet countryside. Millions of peasants were arrested, deported, executed, or died from famine as the government sought to eliminate resistance to its agricultural policies and extract resources for rapid industrialization. Historians estimate that roughly 5 million people perished as a result of these policies and the related hardships of the period. Ukraine suffered especially severely, experiencing a catastrophic famine in 1932-1933 that claimed millions of lives. This tragedy, known as the Holodomor, remains one of the most controversial and significant events of the 20th century. Many scholars view it as a man-made disaster caused by Soviet policies, while debates continue over whether it should be classified as genocide. Regardless of interpretation, the famine demonstrated the immense human cost of Stalin's drive to transform the Soviet Union into an industrial power and revealed the extreme lengths to which his regime was willing to go in pursuit of its goals. In 1934, the assassination of Sergei Kirov, a popular and influential Communist Party leader, became a turning point in Stalin's consolidation of power. The Soviet government blamed supporters of Leon Trotsky and other political opponents for the murder, but many historians have questioned this explanation and have suggested that Stalin may have been involved because Kirov had emerged as a potential rival within the party. Whether or not Stalin played a role in the assassination, he quickly used Kirov's death as justification for expanding state security measures and eliminating perceived enemies. In the years that followed, Stalin launched a series of large-scale purges that targeted alleged spies, political dissidents, intellectuals, military officers, former revolutionary leaders, and even ordinary citizens accused of disloyalty. As arrests, show trials, executions, and imprisonments increased, the purges evolved into a widespread campaign of terror that spread fear throughout Soviet society and strengthened Stalin's absolute control over the Soviet Union. During the Great Purges of the 1930s, Stalin unleashed a campaign of repression that reached into nearly every part of Soviet society. Thousands of high-ranking Communist Party officials were arrested, imprisoned, or executed as Stalin worked to eliminate anyone who might challenge his authority. The purges also devastated the Soviet military, with roughly half of its senior officers removed through arrests, executions, or imprisonment. The secret police, known as the NKVD, carried out mass arrests across the country, often based on forced confessions, fabricated evidence, or mere suspicion. Millions of people were accused of crimes ranging from espionage and sabotage to disloyalty and counter-revolutionary activity. Many were sent to a vast network of forced labor camps known as gulags scattered across Siberia and other remote regions of the Soviet Union, where harsh conditions led to the deaths of countless prisoners. Entire families could be imprisoned, deported, or executed because of their association with a suspected enemy of the state. Stalin's reach extended beyond Soviet borders as well. Former communists and political opponents living abroad remained targets of Soviet intelligence operations. The most famous example was Leon Trotsky, one of the leading figures of the Russian Revolution and Stalin's longtime rival. After years in exile, Trotsky was tracked down in Mexico by NKVD agents and assassinated in 1940. Through purges, show trials, executions, and labor camps, Stalin created an atmosphere of fear that helped secure his absolute control over the Soviet Union while costing millions of people their freedom, livelihoods, or lives. Historians estimate that tens of millions of Soviet citizens died during Stalin's rule as a result of famines, forced collectivization, political repression, executions, labor camp conditions, and other state policies. Of those deaths, roughly 8 million are often associated with the Great Purges and related campaigns of political terror during the 1930s. Through the extensive use of secret police surveillance, mass arrests, show trials, executions, and the vast network of forced labor camps known as gulags, Stalin created a system that penetrated nearly every aspect of Soviet life. Fear became a central tool of government, and even loyal Communist Party members could find themselves accused of disloyalty and punished without warning. By the end of the 1930s, Stalin had established one of the most powerful and repressive dictatorships in modern history, exercising a level of control over society that few other leaders of the era could match. Compared to Mussolini, Stalin ruled with far greater brutality, authority, and ambition. While Mussolini sought to strengthen Italy through nationalism and authoritarian rule, Stalin transformed the Soviet Union through a sweeping program of industrialization, collectivization, and political repression that affected nearly every aspect of society. Under his leadership, the Soviet Union became a highly centralized, industrialized, and militarized state capable of emerging as a major world power. However, these achievements came at a catastrophic human cost. Millions of people died from famine, forced labor, executions, political purges, and other forms of state repression as Stalin pursued his vision of a powerful communist society. The impact of Stalin's rule extended far beyond his own lifetime. His policies and methods helped lay the foundation for the Soviet police state, the vast Gulag labor camp system, and a culture of fear and surveillance that persisted for decades. Stalin also left behind a powerful Soviet Union that would become one of the two superpowers of the post-World War II era, setting the stage for the Cold War. Through a combination of industrial development, political terror, and absolute control, Stalin reshaped both the Soviet Union and the course of 20th century history, leaving a legacy that remains controversial and deeply consequential.